video number 5 in this series on hormone imbalance, mineral imbalance, chronic fatigue, chronic stress, PCOS, insulin resistance, calming your nervous system, adrenal fatigue, just the whole thing. It's a domino effect that starts from video 1, which talks about how your body creates energy within your cells. If you haven't watched that yet, go back and watch that. This is the tail end. There's only one more video after this. Today I'm talking about mast cell dysregulation, histamine intolerance, and mastocytosis. Again, this is the tail end of the dominoes. Go back and watch the first video because things that I'm referring to in this video probably will not make sense if you don't get in order the fundamental. There is an order in which things have to progress for healing to take effect. So the first video was on chronic fatigue and stress and mineral balance and how your body creates energy with oxygen and how oxygen gets transported. The second video is insulin resistance, PCOS, and hormone imbalance, how your body processes sugar or overabundance of sugar, and how that impacts estrogen, ovulation, just the host of things. The third one is calming your nervous system through minerals, vitamins, and in your skeletal care. So that is the biological side of things. Then the fourth video was calming your system through chronic spiritual struggles, chronic conflict, chronic trauma management, fear, anxiety. So that the whole goal of those from the very beginning to the end is to get your body to calm down. Because if your body is in a continual state of stress, fight and flight, your body is never able to rest and recover. What that causes is that your mast cells, which are pretty much the cells that, imagine a guard on a castle wall who's there to say, hey, there's a bad guy, we need to pay attention to that, we need to send somebody out to deal with that. So that is what the mast cells do. They are your guard system. But if they're on guard, your body never has a chance to rest and recover. Your nervous system doesn't have the ability, it's lacking the magnesium and the copper and the retinol that it needs to fulfill that circadian rhythm of, okay, now we get to sleep, now we get to have repair of our cells. No, it's on. The epinephrine has not been able to go back to the liver. The cortisol has never been able to go back to cortisone. You have not dealt with, maybe there's mold toxicity or iron toxicity in your liver because the body isn't able to recycle it well, or there's just an overproduction of it. Your body has hydrogen peroxide build up, and that's called oxidative stress. You'll see that word in a lot of research. So as oxidative stress chronically in your body, there's so many chronic stressors that if you don't deal with them, especially if they layer on top of each other, let's say that you have some mold toxicity in your life, and then you have way too many activities going on in your life, so you don't have a chance or a rhythm for your body to naturally calm down. You don't have a day where you can rest and recover. And let's just say that you're not eating enough of your copper and retinol to produce ceruloplasmin. You don't have enough magnesium. So you just have layer upon layer of triggers that are not getting resolved. Maybe you have a high conflict job or a high conflict person in your life. Maybe you have been dealing with death, or maybe your church is splitting, or maybe there's been contention in your life for more than 1 or 2 years and it's just not getting resolved, or maybe just when you thought one thing got resolved, then bam, another thing happened and you are fried. And what happened is that the guard on the wall has not been able to take a day off, has not been able to go to sleep. The guard on the wall, or in the case of mastocytosis, you have over too many mast cells. So when you have too many mast cells and they're all fried from 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, go back to find that point of where this kind of starts manifesting itself, and go back a little bit and say, where was that point in my life where it was so many stresses all at once that then my body just started collapsing? Go back there and then start really analyzing what were the stressors. Are those stressors still in my life? What is my nourishment? What is my mineral balance intake look like? Am I taking something that is depleting my mineral resources? And that's why I say start with video 1, and you work through those steps in an order so that your nervous system can calm down. I want to say that a lot of this research is from Beth O'Hara with mastcell360.com. So that's the website, mastcell360.com. And Beth O'Hara would be the resource that I learned this from. So if you have histamine issues, there's a histamine intolerance, and that means that your body cannot break down the histamines fast enough. So it's important to note that ceruloplasmin, which I talked about in video 1, which requires retinol and copper to make ceruloplasmin. Ceruloplasmin breaks down hydrogen peroxide through a process with vitamin C and E, and it causes hydrogen peroxide to go back into water molecules. But not only that, there's a 400% increase of clearing histamines when you have enough ceruloplasmin going through your body. So understand, 400% increase in clearing histamines when you have ceruloplasmin production in your body. You have enough ceruloplasmin. And diamine oxidase contains copper. So that bioavailable copper, it is important. The DAO has copper containing. So understand that retinol and copper, bioavailable copper, are just foundational in all of the levels of nervous system breakdown, endocrine breakdown, oxygen breakdown, ceruloplasmin. Mast cell dysregulation is, again, when that castle guard, who's the mast cell, when they don't get to rest because of the chronic stressors, and they begin misfiring and making faulty warnings to your body. So they start identifying good things as bad things, and that's why you see that your body, they say that your body's attacking itself. And mastocytosis is when there's too many mast cells. So imagine if you have too many mast cells, which in and of themselves, they're not bad, but when they start misfiring and when they're exhausted and they're depleted, that can wreak havoc throughout your whole system. And a lot of times, I'm not saying that this is if you have post-nasal drip, you have mast cell dysregulation, but you'll just have histamine flare-ups. There's too many histamines in your body, so you get swelling of your throat, you get scratchy voice, you get post-nasal drip. Those are just some of the symptoms, but then you start having food intolerances. Again, just random swelling, which you have your EpiPen to try to cause your body to respond in a way to help you overcome that. But if you're in that continual chronic state, it doesn't always affect it the way that you would like it to. It starts to have the opposite effect because, again, your nervous system is fried. So the first thing that Beth O'Hara says is to calm your nervous system. And when you calm the nervous system, it tells the mast cells that they can rest. That's why I spent 2 videos on how to calm your nervous system. Those processes that I described biologically, they do require magnesium and also ceruloplasmin. So calming your nervous system needs to be your number 1 goal when you have mast cell dysregulation. But working simultaneously, you do have to deal with your diet, because your intolerances, especially if you have leaky gut, because your cells in your gut have been destroyed through the oxidative stress, it can just build on top of each other, and you can really get deathly ill really quickly. And she talks about removing the toxic factors like mold, or you just have a chronic disease like Lyme's disease, the biblical conflicts, the trauma, the stress, sin, unrepentant of sin, bitterness, any vagus nerve damage, that vagus nerve that deals directly with your gut and your heart and your mind and your brain, how they work. If you have whiplash, I had whiplash, and I definitely deal with effects of vagus nerve damage. So chiropractic help to traction and trying to realign that and to relieve the pressure, because an overstimulated vagus nerve can definitely cause IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, and just a host of gut and immune problems. So you might think, I'm doing every single thing right, and yet you still have problems, and it could very possibly be the overstimulation or a pinched vagus nerve. So the first thing, calm that nervous system. Number 2, simultaneously, she said she has a whole website, and they recommend, there are a lot of websites that say low histamine diets, but I really check out her website because it's very broad nutritionally, because you need nutrition. That's the whole point of this entire thing. You need nutrition, but how do you get your nutrition without killing yourself? And so she covers that by not just what you eat, but how fresh it is. Freshly cooked meat, but not fish, because fish that's been fresh, that's sitting in there, collects bacteria, versus like wild caught salmon is frozen right away on the boat. Then you have your frozen vegetables versus canned vegetables, because frozen vegetables are usually just quickly frozen right after they're ripe, versus canned vegetables that have been sitting in those cans collecting bacteria, and the bacteria of the can. So you're trying really to avoid bacteria by having the freshest options possible. Freezing your leftovers as soon as you make your meal and plate it, then you freeze up the leftovers before you even sit down to keep the bacteria from growing. So bacteria starts growing within 24 hours, but after 48 hours, mold sperms, they start to grow, and that can really impact somebody with mast cell issues. She said, ideally, you can only do what you can afford, but really, if you're paying for all of the medical things, it is good to look and say, is there a way that I can get meat straight from the butcher, buy my own cow, have it slaughtered, then immediately freeze it myself so that it doesn't gather the bacteria, especially beef, because beef is aged for the sake of taste. So those are some also understanding that a low lectin diet, a low histamine diet. Go to her website, mastcell360.com, to help you with that food side. So this is dual faceted, is that you have your diet and also calming the nervous system, and the right supplements in the right order. And sunshine always helps. Not talking about vitamin D. Vitamin D, the hormone D that's put in pasteurized milk, that actually depletes your system. It causes renal potassium loss, which affects your your thyroid and your heart. So that I'm going to talk about that a little bit in the next video, the last video on food-based nutrition on a budget. How do you actually do this? I've explained a lot of the why, but now I want to explain the what and the how in the very last video. I want to just say that I am not a medical doctor. I'm not suggesting that you go off your medication and say, this person, this rando on the internet said that I can heal myself by following her checklist 1, 2, 3, 4. I am not a medical doctor. I am giving you science that is accurate, but you should be under the care of, especially if you already are under the care of a primary care physician who already has you on medication. Don't just go off of your medication. Don't do that. Just learn, research. I highly recommend Morley Robbins. Beth O'Hara, she's gone through she said she stopped counting how much money she's spending at traditional doctors at $150,000. There's not always a lot of training about these types of issues in the medical field. So that being said, if you're wondering how we eat as a family to accomplish this, and how other people have learned to eat to get all of the vitamins and nutrients that you need in your body without falling into traps that will deplete you, just to be aware, make better decisions at the store so you don't spend $300 a month on supplements times however many people are in your family. it can just be a racket. And that's why I'm so glad that I'm not selling anything. I'm not trying to make money off of you. The love of money is the root of all evil. Making money is not wrong, but I don't want to mix motivations. As somebody who has, my story started because of chronic migraines and chronic adrenal fatigue. And I already knew the spiritual side of it, but I didn't have the complete picture. You can always tell if somebody's a false teacher by what they're leaving out, and there are some people who are leaving things out. So that's the end of this first 5 videos. I hope it's helpful. Moving on to how we eat in the next video.